Hi, friends. Welcome back. I'm Emily,
And I'm Whitney.
and you're listening to Cousins Talk Crime. You're listening to a true crime podcast. Today's episode may include sensitive or triggering topics. These topics may include domestic abuse, child abuse, substance abuse, sexual assault, torture, murder, and suicide. So, Whitney, are you getting excited for your trip to California?
Yes, I'm super excited. I feel like it's so far away, and then I realize we're already midway through June.
Yeah, no, it's coming up. It's only just
Yeah.
like a couple weeks
Yeah,
away.
it doesn't feel like that at all.
No, it just the time. Like I always remember my parents saying that time flew by. Like I didn't get it. I get
Mm-hmm.
it now.
Yeah, because when I booked it, I thought, oh, this is forever away, but it's not.
Like we're halfway through June. And my brain can't make sense of how fast it's going.
No.
We booked a trip to Las Vegas, and
Ooh.
it's going to be the end of July, and like it's going to be here before I know it, I'm sure. Like I'm so excited for it.
You said the end of July
Yeah.
to Vegas.
Yep.
That'll be
I've
fun.
been trying to get Corey to go out to Vegas for a while, and then we were just able to find some really like a really cheap way out there. We're flying Spirit. I've never flown Spirit, and I've heard some horror stories, so we'll see. But
Well, my parents had a horrible experience getting home from Mexico.
when
I
did
don't
they go to
know.
Mexico?
They just got back. They went to Mexico with my sister. They left on Friday and got in on Tuesday. So it wasn't like a long trip.
I would hate to go out to Mexico and only be there for like a day or two.
Yeah, 4 nights, I guess. Um, but when they flew back, they had a late flight, but from Mexico, they had where they had to switch flights. What's that called?
A layover.
A layover. And they were flying in to Houston
Okay.
and then from Houston to Indiana. Well, right when they were getting into Houston, they were on their way down. The pilot came over the speaker and said there was a funnel cloud, tornado, and that they had to shoot back up because they weren't allowing anyone to land there, and that he needed gas. So they went to New Orleans to gas up, and they wouldn't let anyone off the plane since it was an international flight and it was late. Everything was closed, in the airport. So they had to sit there for, I think it was 2.5 hours until it was clear to go back into Houston. And when they got back into Houston, their connecting flight, they had I guess 45 minutes to get on that next flight to Indiana. But everyone that couldn't get into Houston was all getting there at the same
Oh my
time.
gosh.
And they were in customs for 2 hours. Because they said the line was just insane and that everyone was sleeping at the airport. They didn't know when they were getting back home.
Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't have anything to do with like the airline
No,
or
no, it was
anything.
just a
I
bad,
thought you were going to tell me a horror story of
it
Spirit
was just a
Airlines.
bad situation all around. I mean, to have that long of a
Too bad.
flight, then almost they said it was to New Orleans. I want to say it was maybe 45 minutes or something. And then sat on the plane for 2 hours. And then went back 45 minutes to Houston to be in customs for 2 hours.
Oh my
And then
god.
miss your connecting flight.
So then you have to sleep there to get another flight in the
Mm-hmm.
morning. Did they have any going straight from Houston to Indianapolis that morning?
They did. They got on one. I don't know what time it was. I want to say it was 6 or 7 in the morning. But I mean, they were supposed to land at 11:45 at night. I was like, that would have been a nightmare with children. A
Oh my
plane for
gosh.
2 hours? And they
Like,
said they were like families.
like, thank God I didn't go to Mexico with the fam. Was Ashley and them with them?
No, not coming back. They flew to California.
Oh yeah,
So
I
they were
forgot that
fine.
he's. I
They were
forgot that
fine.
they're in California.
Yeah. No, that would just happen to be where they're.
Yeah.
No, but you couldn't pay me to do something to the trip wouldn't even been worth it for that fiasco. So I'm praying everything goes smooth when we fly.
To
We're flying on
California.
the 4th of July, so
Hopefully it's not too bad
it's
though,
like
because I feel like most
it
people
was
want to be
cheaper
settled.
than the day before. When everyone's probably trying to get
Yeah.
to where they're going.
By the
Now,
4th of July, people are wanting to be settled. So hopefully it's kind
yeah.
of.
Now ours is like a 6 in the morning flight, and with the time change in California, by the time we get to California, it will only be like 9 a.m. there.
Oh, that's good. You're
Yeah.
just going to lose a lot of time on your way
Yeah.
home. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to leave at like 11 a.m. and get
Yeah.
home at like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Even later.
You're gonna lose a lot of time on the way back.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Because
it's
a
a
4 hour
5 hour flight,
flight
4 hour flight, and
and
then you're
then 4
3
hours
hours. Oh,
difference.
4 hour
I
difference.
think so, yeah.
Oh my
So it'll
gosh.
be like 8 hour, like we'll leave there at a certain time, then we'll get to Indiana 8 hours later. Indiana time.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof, yeah. I've been really lucky with any flights I've taken. I haven't really had any that are terrible, so. But I don't fly that often.
Yeah. The last couple times I have it's went smooth, so knock on wood.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm excited to go to Vegas because I want Corey to experience like dry desert heat because it's
Mm.
so much better than the humid heat that's
Oh
here.
my gosh.
Like if you've never experienced what dry heat feels like, you just don't know what you're missing out on.
No, when we went to California for the first time, that was my first time. And like, you just can't even describe the weather difference. Because the last time we went, it was early. It was like late May.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like high 60s, 70s, but it was still warm enough to swim. Like, it wasn't cold, but it wasn't like a humid heat. It was like still like a nice.
Yeah. So when you're here in Indiana, okay, it's 100 degrees outside, but it's humid.
Yeah.
No, even if you get in the shade, it's miserable.
Yeah.
But you could go to Vegas and it could be 120 degrees outside. If you're in the shade, you're fine.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
And I think it's gonna be like 80s and stuff while we're there, but it still doesn't feel like 80s here.
No, it doesn't.
And it doesn't rain.
It is so different.
There's like no rain hardly ever.
Very first time I ever felt dry heat like that, like desert heat, was when we went to Vegas when I was like 18 years old and I was like, this is weird. It was like, I remember it was like 105 degrees outside and I'm like, this is nothing.
Yeah.
This is nothing
No,
compared to
because
80
I remember
degrees at
thinking
home.
like, oh, everyone hypes California up. I remember my first time going, and then like I was like, I cannot wait to come back because the weather is just like beautiful, and the mountains. It's just it's just you can't compare it to.
No. If you've never experienced West Coast area, you got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You got to experience it because, woo, that humid heat. It ain't the heat that gets you, it's the humidity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's get into today's case. So today's case, I'm actually taking us to Texas.
Ooh.
This is my first one that I'm really venturing outside of Indiana, and there was one that I did in Kentucky, the Crystal Rogers case. However, it's really close to my family that lives in Kentucky, so
Speaking of that, has there been any updates?
I haven't looked it up. So I do not know if there's been any like significant updates at this time. I'm sure there might be something. Yeah. But I'm going to take you to Texas in 1996.
Ooh, a long time ago.
Yeah, it's been a while ago. We were just little kids bebopping around. So I'm going to tell you the story of Darlie Routier. Now, Darlie Lynn Peck was born on January 4th, 1970 in Altoona, Pennsylvania, to Darlie and Larry Peck. I've never seen this before, but the daughter had the same name as the mother, which made this story very, very confusing. So I don't really ever reference her mother as Darlie, trying not to get them mixed up. I'll just call her her mom. But yes, her and her mom do share the same name.
Okay.
Darlie, which is weird, but okay. And she was the first of 3 children. Now, her parents did get divorced when she was 7 years old, and her mother later remarried. And in her teen years, the family moved to a town in Texas called Lubbock. I think that's how you say it. Her and her siblings, including her step-siblings, got along really well. I guess they really bonded over the move because it was dramatic. You know, it was hard for teenage kids to move across the country.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania to Texas is pretty significant. So that brought her and her siblings and everyone kind of a little closer together. Now, according to what I read, Darlie's mom and stepfather had a pretty rocky relationship, just kind of going at it all the time. Like, it just was never peace. And even sometimes they would get into physical altercations. It's not like he was abusing her. It's like they were abusing each other.
Like almost like mental, like they were
Yeah.
just constantly.
Yeah. And they did eventually divorce, leaving Darlie's mother alone and her girls without a father figure. I guess they didn't have their dad because she did move them across the country, so I don't know if dad decided just to not be a part of the kids' lives, or maybe mom made that decision. I don't know. But they're left without a father figure. And I also feel bad for, like, I've never had this, but I feel bad for step siblings in this case. Like, you get really close with your step siblings, and then if the parents divorce, it's like you break up with them too. And I feel bad for them because they did get a really strong relationship. Now, Darlie was what you would consider a very confident girl. I mean, she was pretty okay. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think she was a supermodel or anything, but I mean, she was pretty, but she was very confident.
Oh.
Some people are just very confident in their skin,
Yeah.
which is great. And the boys were very keen to her. So I think that that also kind of fueled her vanity. Especially a boy named Darrin Routier.
So Darin and Darlie.
Yeah. Now, Darin worked as a busboy in a restaurant that Darlie's mother worked at. Now, Darlie's mom thought that he was a bright, good-looking boy with a strong head on his shoulders. He was going to do something with his life. She could just sense that at a young age. Great. So, Darlie's mom played as matchmaker and thought that he would be a really good fit for Darlie. And I guess mom knew what she was doing because from everything I've read, it was love at first sight. They immediately fell in love. And so now we have Darlie and Darin. And they do become obsessed with the letter D. I will say that. I will say that. So Darin was actually 2 years older than Darlie. And so when they were in high school, they dated. And then when he graduated high school, he was going to go to college in Dallas. And when I looked it up, Dallas was like I wrote it down, like a 5-hour drive, like over a 5-hour drive. So they weren't like dating heavily, but they were still like,
Yeah.
as much as you can be being that far away from each other in the 90s. It's not like today where a text message is instant. Now, I guess before he went to Dallas for college, they had a going away party for him. And this going away party was like the first time that Darin's friends saw some weirdness out of Darlie. And so according to a friend of Darin's, Darlie was starting to show a very possessive side. And I guess she was annoyed at all the attention that Darin was getting at the party. This was literally his going away party, and she's upset that he's getting attention. Okay. So she left the party. She said, bye. I don't want to attend your stupid going away party anyway. You're getting too much attention. She's a little drama queen.
Yeah.
And then she later came back frantically claiming that someone had tried to rape her.
Where at? From her time leaving?
Yeah. And I guess that took some of the attention away from Darin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that would.
which is what she wanted.
An attempted rape, yeah.
Yeah. But once she graduated high school, Darlie joined Darin in Dallas, and they both got jobs at the same company. He had went to school for some kind of like tech stuff, IT stuff, tech stuff, I don't know. And he was working at they were both working at a computer chip company.
Mm-hmm.
And he was working as like a technician or something that his degree helped him with. So they decided to live together, and they eventually got married in August of 1988. Now, within a year of getting married, they relocated to a small town called Rowlett. Here, Darin started his own company called TestNet that tested circuit boards for computers, and it was based out of their home. So he was starting a company with this little IT business, and it was actually probably a good company to start because it's the 90s. Computers are starting to flow into everybody's homes and stuff like that. So I think he was ahead of the curve there in starting that company. Now, their first child was born on June 14th, 1989, a sweet, healthy baby boy named Devon. Their second child was born on February 19th, 1991, and his name was Damon. So we got Darlie, Darin, Devon, and Damon.
Okay. And 2 Darlies.
And mom's Darlie.
Okay.
So they seemed to be living the modern American dream. They had 2 sweet boys at home, and Darin's tech company had grown so well that they needed to buy a space in an office building. So things were going really good for them. In 1992, the successful couple decided to build a home in an upscale, safe neighborhood. The house cost them $130,000 to build, which makes me really sad. Because when I did a conversion of what $130,000 is, I'm getting a little... this isn't even political. This is just not anything to do with true crime. But when you convert $130K to what it is today, is $291,000, okay? I bet you anything that house would be worth like $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
So the conversions, they're not mathin', folks. Inflation is crazy. They're not... The conversion's they're not mathin'. If the conversion is correct, this house should sell for $291,000.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's why people can't afford homes nowadays.
Right.
You're really getting in the way of Whitney's business.
I can't even afford a home.
I know, it's wild.
Well, the rates, I mean...
I know, Corey and I would not be able to afford this home if we bought it today.
Yeah.
We bought it with like a 2.5%, 3.5% maybe.
Yeah, we were even trying to figure out 4-bedroom, like maybe around mid-2s, like 250. You're still looking at $2,000 a month
And
with a down payment.
Yeah, and is that even including like your escrow?
With like 800 credit score.
Yeah.
I mean, who wants to spend that on a...
Well, you can always refinance. Okay. But I still can't afford a $3,000 payment.
Right.
Whether I can refinance in the future or not.
Right.
Like, I can afford a payment, but I can't afford groceries.
Right.
How am I going to get to work?
Like, no one wants to be house poor.
No, we don't. Gosh, Corey wants to move to Bedford so bad, but, like, we can't afford to. We're going to be stuck in this house the rest of our lives.
It's hard to leave with a 2.5 rate.
I think we're at 3.5. I think 3. I was being a little dramatic, but still 3.5.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, people are dreaming of that right now.
Yeah.
People are like, can we get to 5?
Yeah, the second it goes down, Whitney.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're going to have a lot of people calling, but I'm going to be on that list. So anyway, we can get back into... I don't know where I left off. No, I do now, because we were talking about the prices of homes.
Yeah.
So anyway.
We're back.
We are back.
To talking crime.
Cousins talk. Home inflation. Home prices. I always thought that it would be cool, like, if we could brand us as the Cousins Talk group, and then if we get enough people, we could have, like, a Cousins Talk politics podcast or just something.
Yeah.
Cousins do this. Cousins talk about this. So anyway, back to Darlie and her family of D's. Okay, so Darlie was a wonderful mother. Anybody you ask, man, this woman is a wonderful mother, okay?
Yeah.
But you never know what happens behind closed doors. I will say that forever. You never know what's going on.
Mm-mm.
But to the eye, she seemed like a wonderful mother. She was the type that thought her kids hung the moon, you know? And she was, like, her house was decorated for all the holidays, and her kids had very big, extravagant birthdays. So, I mean, people would think she's a great mother. She's great. But Darlie was very materialistic. So since Darin had this company that was doing really well, they were able to afford the nicer things in life.
Mm-hmm.
I guess she got a boob job, and she got, like, huge.
That, like, don't fit her body.
No, like the kind you see in certain kinds of videos.
Yeah.
Or, you know, that just, it was too much. And she would wear, like, really revealing clothing because she was proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I read, her materialistic ways eventually got in the way of her caring for her kids the way that she should. You know, her kids were only toddlers. Only toddlers. I mean, 3-4 years old. Like, they were toddlers. Okay? And people say they were left unsupervised, like, in the house alone.
Oh,
Mom's out just doing whatever, and we got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old just chilling.
Oh,
at
that's
home.
not good.
They say when she did attend to her kids, she was very impatient and bothered that she needed to care for them. So she went from being such a wonderful mother to transitioning to being so bothered by her children. They're saying that the materialistic things are what caused this. I don't know. Now, the marriage between Darin and Darlie became rocky, and the two were publicly getting into it in front of other people. Some claim that the two of them were both in extramarital relationships with other people, but they still attempted to keep up the facade that they were in a happy relationship, even though they were allegedly having relationships with other people, which is fine if that's your thing. Great. I personally know people that choose that type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
Which is great. If you guys mutually, like, agree to that and that works for your relationship, then great. But I don't know. It's just weird. I personally don't think I could do that.
No.
Now, Darlie got pregnant with their third child in early 1995. And the friends that they had were actually really ecstatic because, like I said, their relationship was really rocky.
Yeah.
So their friends were really excited because they thought this was going to fix their relationship and this was going to get their relationship to mend. Their third baby was born October 18th, 1995, and his name was Drake. So we got another D name. Pretty sure their dog even had a D name. Apparently, Darlie had severe postpartum depression with him, and she had very violent mood swings and a temper. Now, at this time, Darin's company, Testneck, would eventually start losing business and losing money. Now, their financial situation rapidly declined because the couple refused to cut costs and spending. I don't know if they thought that this was just a lull and things would pick back up, but the business wasn't doing well, and they were still spending as if the business was booming.
That's never good.
So they're getting themselves into a really bad financial situation. So Darlie sporadically kept a diary, and there were times she would attend to it daily, and then sometimes she would just, like, forget about it for months, and then she would do it again for a few days, and then she'd forget about it again. I'm guilty of that. I'm like, oh, yes, I'm going to start journaling.
Yeah.
And then after 2 days, I'm done. And then a couple months later, I'm like, I'm going to do it again.
I've done that too.
You know, I'm guilty of that. So I don't think there's anything weird about that. On May 3rd, 1996, contemplating suicide, Darlie wrote, Devon, Damon, and Drake, I hope you will forgive me for what I'm about to do. My life has been such a hard fight for a long time, and I just can't find the strength to keep fighting anymore. I love you three more than anything in this world, and I want all three of you to be healthy and happy, and I don't want you to see a miserable person every time you look at me. Now, I guess when she was writing this, Darin walked in on her. So she confessed the suicidal thoughts and that she was writing a suicide note. And so they did have a long talk, and, you know, he kind of talked her out of it and that sort of thing. Now, that was on May 3rd, 1996. Now, he talked her off the ledge. Things, I think, were going okay. And then on Thursday, June 6th, so just a little over a month later, Darlie called 911.
911, what is your emergency? Ma'am? What? Who did? Hang on. Hang on, ma'am. I got medical emergency. Ma'am, I'm trying to get an ambulance to you. Hang on a minute. What's going on, ma'am?
Okay. So it's probably hard to understand what she's saying. I'm looking at the words on the screen. If you were looking at the words, you'd be able to understand.
Yeah, that was hard.
But she is very frantic. Darlie is freaking out. So a lot of times she's saying, my boys are dying. Someone broke into my house. My boys are dying. The last time she says they're dead. Oh my God. Oh, Devon is already dead. Oh God. I don't even know who did this. So this call does go on for 5 minutes and 40 seconds, and she's just pretty hysterical the whole time. So there's not really any point to listen to the whole thing. If you want to, you are more than welcome to get on YouTube and look this up. There is a part where you can hear Darin, the dad husband, in the background, and he's freaking out as well. So he does eventually come into the thing, and he's freaking the fuck out. Like, they're both freaking out. It's a crazy 911 call because it's dramatic, but that is it. Now, so obviously, the police are coming to the scene. She's freaking out. We've got kids that are dying or already dead. Who knows what's going on? So the first policeman on the scene was David Waddle. Now, he was horrified at the scene and the amount of blood. Devon was clearly already deceased, and Darin was attempting CPR on him. So I guess Darin was looking at his two boys and like, who do I give my attention to? He's like, I don't know what I need to do. So he decided that he was going to give his attention to the one that wasn't breathing. Mm-hmm. He was going to give him CPR. So that is what Darin was doing. And Damon was still alive, but he was barely clinging on to life. Now, the officer instructed Darlie. He said, hey, ma'am, I know you're hysterical right now, but you need to go get a towel, and you need to apply pressure to your child's wounds. And she just completely ignored what he said. She's just too hysterical. She's just like, I'm not going to listen to him. She kept screaming at the officer, stating that the attacker might still be in the garage because that's where he fled to. She thinks he came in and out of the garage somehow. Now, Sergeant Matthew Walling soon arrived on scene, and the two men that were there, so Walling and Waddell, followed a trail of blood to the garage looking for the attacker. They did not find the attacker, but they did find a screen on like one of the side windows in the garage, and it had like a big slash in it. So they did find that. They then checked every inch of the house for the intruder. They did find a blood-covered butcher knife on the countertop of the island in the kitchen. They were immediately curious because the knife laid beside a woman's purse and some very expensive jewelry, like untouched jewelry. So they're thinking like, if some random person came into the house to kill somebody, it's probably for like a robbery, right? Why aren't they taking,
right,
this really expensive jewelry?
That's weird.
So that was their first kind of like, I'm not sure about that. So they did find the youngest baby, the 6-month-old Drake, upstairs safe in his crib. He was fine. He was awake due to the havoc that was going on in the house, all the screaming, freaking out, but he was unharmed. The medics on the scene immediately found knife wounds that punctured both boys' lungs, causing them both to suffer agonizing deaths of just like suffocating because their lungs were punctured. Now, Damon was still alive when the paramedics got him in the ambulance, but despite their efforts to keep him alive, he did die before he was able to get to the hospital. Now, during the time that Damon was being transported to the hospital, police were back at the house with Darlie, and they were able to tend to her wounds and get her calmed down. Now, she had some like light wounds. They weren't massive, and she had like a slit on her throat. I don't know. She had a wound on her throat. I don't know. So once she calmed down, she told him that an intruder entered their home, and she woke up to him on top of her, like trying to rape her or something. And then she fought with him, and he was able to give her a good cut on the throat, but she eventually fought him off, and he fled to the garage. And that's when she noticed the horrific scene he left behind. That's when she realized Damon and Devon had been brutally attacked and, you know, were left for dead. So I guess he attacked the kids and then
Came up to attack her.
And then came up to rape her and attack her. So anyway, she described the attacker as a medium to tall height man dressed in entirely black t-shirt, jeans, and baseball cap. She could not have been any more textbook intruder. He was medium to tall height wearing all black. Do better than that.
Right.
That's literally textbook.
It's probably the same guy that tried to get her when she left that party.
Probably. She's got this crazy intruder stalking her. Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
So-
I said
No, it was a good one. I liked it. So it was 3 a.m. before the police were finished with their interviews, and Darlie was able to go to the hospital to get medical attention for her wounds. And Darin was too worked up to drive, so the neighbor drove him to the hospital, and the neighbor's wife babysat the little baby, Drake. Now is when investigators and detectives came into play, and they immediately started analyzing the scene, finding the facts, getting the evidence, that sort of stuff. So they went back to the bloody knife that was laid on the kitchen island, and it was placed there by Darlie. She said that specifically. She said that it was on the ground, and she picked it up and put it on the counter.
it's convenient.
Why would you pick it up? Oh, he left this behind. I'm sorry. The police scoured the house inch by inch, and they went upstairs. They were met with a very loud Pomeranian. Its name started with a D. I did not write it down, but this Pomeranian's name started with a D. Okay. Now, the dog nipped at the policeman, and the neighbor told them that the dog was not keen to strangers and was very territorial.
Right, where was it earlier?
Exactly. That's where the police were like, if someone was in a house, then why didn't the dog barking wake up Darlie? Why did it take this intruder being on top of her?
Right.
So that is something that the police caught on to immediately.
Yeah.
Where was this dog?
Yeah.
Now, this was a very safe, upscale neighborhood. People brought their families here to be safe.
Yeah.
So nothing like this was ever thought of as even a possibility, happening. So everyone in the community were just shook. Even the officers were emotional. I read something somewhere where one of the officers that zipped up Devon into the body bag were sobbing as he was doing it. He got that emotional about it. They didn't realize this was possible. Now, the lieutenant on the scene, Grant Jack, immediately thought something was suspicious. He just knew something wasn't right. The math wasn't mathing. It just wasn't mathing. Now, after Lieutenant Jack let his suspicions be known, Sergeant Walling said, quoted here, "Lieutenant, you won't believe what Mr. Routier said to me right before he left to go to the hospital with his wife. He turned to me and I swear to God, he said, 'Golly, I guess this is the biggest thing Rowlett's ever had.' The man had 2 of his children slaughtered tonight and he's acting like the damn circus is in town." So Walling just thought it was weird, but since Lieutenant Jack said, like, the math ain't mathin', he's like, well, actually, listen to this. Listen to what this guy said. Like, it's weird. And so that's when Lieutenant Jack was like, okay, math ain't mathin'.
Yeah.
So the 4th suspicious thing they found at the home, so this is behind the knife being on the counter, the dog, and the weird statement made by Darin, was the fact that the entire kitchen was covered in blood, except the sink was squeaky clean. That raised the question, why is it clean?
Yeah.
Someone was rinsing something off. Why else would the sink be clean?
Right.
Now, the investigators did a luminol test, and if you're unfamiliar with what a luminol test is, it's like a test where they do like a chemical test to check for blood that has been cleaned. Have you ever watched the movie Gone Girl? Like, she was so smart that she planted her own blood everywhere and then cleaned it all up because she knew they would find it in a luminol test.
Yeah.
So,
And a lot of it, too.
Yeah. So that's what this luminol test is. So they're looking for blood that has been cleaned up or wiped away.
Yeah.
You can't see the blood with your eyes, but if there was...
like this black light type thing?
Yeah. And the test showed the sink and the surrounding counter covered in blood. So, like, why was the blood cleaned up? I don't know.
That don't make any sense.
Now, they found more blood on the sofa. Damon's handprint was left behind. Someone had cleaned it up. Why? Why did it get cleaned up? A crime scene consultant, James Cron, immediately found other variables to prove that what Darlie said happened literally couldn't have happened. He's saying things that she said happened physically, scientifically could not have happened. So now Darlie had stated that she thought the intruder had entered through and left through the garage. And when they went to the garage, they did find the screen with the gash in it, okay? However, the gash had clearly never been used. It was just like if someone took a knife, they didn't climb through it or climb, because it's going to stretch. It's going to tear some more. She just thought...
She's been watching Scream or something. That's what that reminds me of, like, what did that do? Show that someone...
Yeah, that shows someone came through. There's a gash. And they also said... They also noted that the screen was, like, not even locked in. It was easily removable. So they said any criminal with, like, an idiot's IQ would have just removed the screen. Instead of... Like,
right.
You're a dumbass.
That's not looking good.
Yeah, and so there was also, like, right outside that window, there was, like, wet mulch and dirt and stuff, and it was unbothered. There was no footprints. There was nothing in the mulch or the grass, or even, like, if you walk through the grass or the wet mulch, when you jump inside... It's going to leave, like, a little dirt on the floor.
Yeah. You're going to be able to see that someone disturbed.
Yeah. Anyway, and I know I've got it written in here somewhere, but it's not with this, but it goes with this. The last kicker with this stupid-ass window. This window is not a window that's used very often, so there's, like, a heavy layer of dust on the window, like on the windowsill. Okay? Unbothered. There's not a handprint, not a smudge, nothing. If someone was going through the window, they would have disturbed the dust. She didn't think this one through.
No, she didn't.
Anyway. So now he's still not completely against her at this point. He thought maybe the intruder could have come in another way, but when they scoured the property, there's no evidence of forced entry anywhere in the house. So it's not even like a slight indication or a possibility. So they went to the living room to find evidence of the fight and the struggle that Darlie had explained having, but they couldn't find much. Everything out of place seemed to have been meticulously staged out of place. There was a flower arrangement knocked over, but no flowers were actually broken or damaged, which led them to believe that someone gently placed it on its side in order to not disturb the flowers. So, like, if the flowers knocked over, some petals would be missing. They were gently placed.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm. In the kitchen, there was a shattered wine glass and a vacuum on its side. And these items were on top of Darlie's bloody footprints. So that indicated that these were placed in order to show a struggle, but fell a while after the blood had been spilled. So, like, the way it was and her footprint being under it, they said there's no way that this could have fell, like, while they were having a struggle. Like, it was...
Basically, she went around and knocked stuff over afterwards.
Yeah. After an all-day examination of the house, the investigator summed up his findings. He said to Lieutenant Jack and Sergeant Walling, quoted, "We all know the crime scene tells the story. Problem is, that story's not the same one that Darlie is telling. Somebody inside this house did this thing. Gentlemen, there was no intruder." So day after, whatever. They're already saying there is no intruder. Like, someone inside the house did this. So on Thursday, the day after the murders, Darlie was again interviewed by the police, and this time by detectives Jimmy Patterson and Chris Frosch. She reiterated her story of the attack. Her description was slightly more detailed than before. She said, "I woke up hearing my son Damon saying, 'Mommy, Mommy,' as he tugged on my nightshirt. I opened my eyes and felt a man get off of me. I got up to chase after him. As I flipped the light in the kitchen on, I saw him open his hand and let the knife drop to the floor. Then he ran out through the garage. I went over, picked up the knife. I shouldn't have picked it up. I probably covered up the fingerprints. I shouldn't have picked it up. I looked over and saw my 2 babies with blood all over them. I didn't realize my own throat had been cut until I saw myself in a mirror. I screamed out to my husband." So now she's gotten a little more detailed about this fight. So he cut her throat while she was asleep, and that didn't wake her up. But her dying baby saying, "Mommy, Mommy," woke her up. But if these kids were stabbed in the lungs, I don't know. So correct me if I am wrong. But I don't know that they could speak if their lungs are punctured. I mean, that's where you get your air to speak.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm buying that.
I'm not buying it. So the nursing staff at the hospital she was staying at weren't buying her act at all. A lot of them get on the stand to talk about how weird her behavior is. They thought she was acting weird, and she became obsessed with telling everyone that she picked up the knife and shouldn't have. Like, she made that her whole personality. "I shouldn't have picked up the knife. I shouldn't have picked it up. I covered up his fingerprints. I shouldn't have picked it up." Like, she got obsessed with telling everyone about that. Like, guilty people
Is her
won't shut
husband
up.
buying this?
No, yes.
He loves her.
Blind love. I'm sorry, but blind, like, as much as I love my spouse, my children would come first.
Right.
Other hospital staff said that she was very cold to the situation. They said that Darlie's mom and sister came to the hospital to be with Darlie, and they were hysterical. And Darlie she showed no emotion, which I will give her the benefit of the doubt. People act differently to these sort of situations. Sometimes people do just get completely cold.
Yeah.
But I feel like at a certain point, the numbness to it like wears off.
Yeah.
And then the emotion comes through. The emotion literally never comes through for Darlie. She would say that she was upset, but like physically she would not be upset. She's like people that sit there and say, that's funny. So why aren't you laughing? You know what I mean? Like they're saying something that's not really how they're feeling.
Right.
Now, Cotner, who was working with trauma patients, and he had been working with trauma patients for like a decade, adds quotations, "The reaction of people who lose their children is a wide range of emotions. But mothers are always inconsolable. But in my entire nursing experience, I have never seen a reaction like Darlie's." Several members of the hospital staff released statements similar. Like I said, like none of them were buying her crap. Later, at the funeral for the two boys, a detective overheard Darlie whisper to them in their casket saying, "I'm sorry." And then she wailed, "Who could have done this to my children?" But like she whispers, "I'm sorry." But then says, "Who did this to my kids?" You know. When a former housekeeper gave her condolences about the tragedy, and then she added, as she was talking to Darlie, like how she felt sympathetic that she had to deal with all the funeral expenses and that kind of stuff. Darlie replied back to her with, quote unquote, "I'm not worried. I'll get $5,000 for each of the boys." So she's not worried about funeral costs. She's getting $10,000.
That is a weird thing to say.
The family blamed Darlie's lack of emotion to the Xanax that was prescribed to her by her doctor. And while Darin is visibly upset and being consoled by family, Darlie is more worried about looking at the flower arrangements and who sent them. So at the funeral, Darin's standing up by the caskets, inconsolable, like not having a good time. And Darlie's just walking around carefree looking at the flowers, like who sent the flowers. Like, I want to see who sent these pretty flowers. And then she made a comment saying that, telling everyone that she'll be sure to send out thank you cards because it's the proper thing to do. Why are you thinking about sending? I don't think people are expecting thank you cards for their condolence flowers. I don't think that's the proper. Anyway, after the murders, Darlie, Darin, and Drake were staying at Mom Darlie's house. Darlie did eventually go back to the house because they were needing like some clothes. And she decided to call a friend named Mercedes Adams. And this is a few days after the funeral. And she was like, "Will you go with me to the house?" And Mercedes is like, "Oh my God, I will go with you because you need a friend, obviously. Going back to the scene of the crime of your kids is just going to be horrific." And she was ready to just be a really good friend. All right. So as soon as they walked in the door, it blows my mind. As soon as they walked in the door, Mercedes was expecting a breakdown. But instead, the first thing Darlie said when she walked in the door was, "Look at this mess. It'll cost us a fortune to fix this shit." I guess Mercedes immediately knew something was wrong. So Mercedes stated for the police, right there where her boys were killed, and that's the first thing she said to me. She said that she put her hands on Darlie's shoulders and said, "Darlie, look me in the eye and tell me you did not kill those boys." Like, she immediately knew it right there. Look me in the face and tell me you didn't do it. And she said, she looked me in the eye and said, "I'm going to get new carpet, new drapes, and fix this room all up." She said, I couldn't believe it. She didn't deny it.
I mean, she's just like pretending her friend didn't just accuse her of murder.
Yeah, she just,
That's wild.
It is. So back at the Rowlett police station, questions loomed. Among them, first question, what was the motive for the murders? 2, if it was a robbery, why was Darlie's jewelry and purse left untouched? So we're not thinking it's a robbery, because that doesn't make any sense. 3, why would an intruder kill 2 children before dispatching the adult who posed a more serious threat? 4, why would the killer, who obviously had no scruples about murdering a pair of small boys, back off when Darlie awoke, leaving a witness to identify him? Like,
Right.
from what it sounds like, her second statement, as soon as she woke up, he was like, ah, and left.
Right. Well, he gashed the screen and scraped her throat.
5th question. Why would he drop the murder weapon on the floor, giving Darlie, his pursuer, a weapon in which to fight back? 6. Why would he have used the Routier's butcher knife in the first place? People that go somewhere intending to, like, inflict violence brings their own weapon.
And that means he cut the screen from inside the house.
Yeah, and that's what they're saying is
He
there's that
ran
one.
into the garage, slit the screen, and ran back
Well, then how
out
did he
the
get
front
in?
door.
How did he get in if he didn't have a knife?
Right, he didn't have one to be. That's what I mean. He got it inside, then ran to the garage and slit that screen.
Yeah, the police do bring that one up. 7. Why were there no visible signs of an intruder's footprints, handprints, drops of blood beyond the house where he made his escape?
Dust moved.
And as questions mounted, it appeared that a bread knife owned by the Routiers might have been used to cut the garage screen. Thus, more questions.
Right.
Had the intruder used the Routier's bread knife to slash his way in? And question 9, if so, how did he get the knife in the first place?
Right.
No, her story is not, she's not near as good as this Gone Girl woman. Now, those are all of our questions that we're posing at the time. So now we're going to go into Darlie's wounds that she had, her wounds. She was attacked as well. Okay? So Dr. Townsend Parchman had examined the wounds, and while her boys were maliciously and forcefully attacked, her wounds were what they call hesitation wounds. And the wounds indicated the blade had slowly, deliberately cut into the skin, and when pain was encountered, the person holding the blade reflexively withdrew it. So that means whoever did that was the person that it was
Did
her.
it to themselves.
Did it to themselves. Because it's really easy for someone to stab someone when they're not feeling the pain, but when they're feeling it, it goes different. I'm glad we have scientists that can, like, put that crap together. But yeah. The FBI compared the boys' wounds to Darlie's wounds, and they were vastly different. Darlie's were considered superficial, and the boys' were massive. One said the killer focused on their chest almost as if going for their heart. That indicates extreme anger towards them. Like it's personal. That's not just a random stranger coming in. That was someone trying, like that was someone with some anger.
Yeah.
Now, another examination of the home was done to further examine the items left after the struggle. They said that the person who did this would have had to have had a strong connection to the material items in the home. Like I said, things were meticulously pushed over to ensure they didn't break because they had a strong connection to these items. They didn't want to lose them.
Right.
Like the vase that this flower arrangement was in is probably like a $3,000 vase, and I don't want to lose it, so I'm just going to...
Yeah.
I'm only getting $10,000 for the boys. I can't get rid of that much furniture. Golly. Now, the FBI's conclusion was that the boys' killer was someone who knew them and knew the premises. The entire scenario had been planned in advance and staged. So the FBI is saying that. On June 14th, Darlie pulled a stunt that would later become the state's case against her. So June 14th was the day of Devon's birthday. He would have been 7 that day. Darlie decided to throw a party at the boys' gravesite, and she invited local news stations to cover the birthday party live. They also had a pastor come in, and he performed a ceremony, and once he finished the eulogy, as home viewers watched live, Darlie began spraying a can of silly string across the ground, laughing and chewing bubblegum and singing happy birthday.
Happy birthday, dear Devon. Happy birthday to you.
Love you, Devon and Damon.
Pain was not the focus Friday as family members celebrated at graveside what would have been Devon's 7th birthday.
They're up in heaven, and they're up there having the biggest birthday party that we could ever imagine.
Darlie Routier, who suffered stab wounds in the attack, says she won't rest until her boy's killer is caught.
We don't know whether we're coming or going, you know? And he's free. He's free to do whatever he wants. But I know that he's not going to be free for long, and I feel it.
And I feel like here she's officially lost it. Like, officially lost it. One, it's weird that you're having a birthday party at their gravesite. 2, it's weird that you invited news outlets to come and tape it live.
That's bizarre.
Like, you're still in the grieving stage. This is only like 8 days after the death. They died on the 6th, and this happened on the 14th. Like, you're still in the grieving stage. This isn't 5 years from now, and you're having like a remember. Like, if you want to have a birthday at the gravesite, that's an intimate thing between you and the family. That's not a news
That's
story.
bizarre.
And she's jumping up and down, laughing and having a great time, like spraying silly string everywhere. It's so weird.
Mm-hmm.
And to justify her actions, she later said, "If you knew my sons, you'd know that they are up there in heaven having the biggest birthday party we could ever imagine. And though our hearts are breaking, they wouldn't want us to be unhappy. But they'll be a part of us always." I'm sorry. Like, I know people say this a lot. They're like, oh, our people are in heaven and they would want us to be happy. They'd want us to move on, blah, 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 blah. I get it. But these are a 6-year-old and like a 4-year-old. They're not thinking that. They're not thinking that. Don't say that. They're not thinking that. They're thinking, why did you murder me, Mom? That's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
So she later was questioned about her son's killer and said, in quotes, "The only thing that keeps me going is the hope that they will find that person. I have faith in God. I believe he will direct the police to that man." You mean you. 4 days after that statement, on June 18th, the Rowlett Police Department arrested Darlie Routier for the murder of her 2 kids. Yeah, they were like,
We're not buying it.
we're not buying it. The local community was like completely stunned. Now, people close to her, like her friend that witnessed her saying that weird thing when they went to the house for the first time, like in the hospital staff, they weren't surprised. But like the general consensus, they were really shocked. Darlie was officially indicted on June 28th on 2 counts of capital murder. Her case was going to be moved out of Dallas County because of bad publicity and prejudice jury members. The state prosecutor, Greg Davis, stated he was going to seek the death penalty. Now, people thought that this was a bit dramatic and unlikely because the last woman that was executed in Texas was during the Civil War. They didn't think there was any way that she was going to get the death penalty, but Greg Davis, the prosecutor, said, I don't give a crap. I want her to die.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really think she did this, and if anyone does that to their children, they deserve it.
Yeah.
Now, immediately after her arrest, Darlie demanded that she be given a polygraph test, which the police agreed to administer. They were like, sure, you want to, implicate yourself, you go right ahead.
Yeah.
Take a lie detector. We're convinced you did it. But they informed Darlie that her husband would not be able to be present during the test, and so she withdrew her request. I think she was trying to call their bluff. She was like, give me a lie detector test. I'm innocent.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were like, okay, she was like, oh, I didn't think it was going to get this far.
She doesn't seem like the brightest.
No. However, she did change her mind on behalf of the advice from her defense team. She would take a polygraph, but before she would take it, she was going to exercise her right to take a private test first. Now, I don't think the private test went well because I don't think she ever had a non-private test. So the result of the private test was never formally released. Shocker. Because it obviously wasn't in her favor.
Right.
However, Darlie and her mother were seen immediately afterwards by news outlets, and they were sobbing. So, she obviously failed it.
Right.
And after the prosecution announced its desire for the death penalty, Darin's parents dropped literally everything they had to pay for a defense lawyer. I guess at that time she was using only what the state provided for her, but they were like, oh shit, they're trying to put her to death. We need to give her a decent defense lawyer. So they mortgaged their home and everything for this. And they hired a man named Doug Mulder. Jury selection began on October 16th, 1996 and took just shy of a month. On November 14th, they announced a jury consisting of 7 women and 5 men. Now, Darin, Darlie's mother, and other family supporters were staying in hotels so they could remain close to Darlie throughout the trial. And during this time, Darin completely stopped paying the mortgage and the house was repossessed by the make, which I don't blame him for. I wouldn't want to live in that house.
Right.
And you're not going to be able to sell it because 2 kids were massacred in it by their mother.
Yeah.
You okay?
Yeah, my tailbone's just been hurting.
Ouchies. So I don't blame him for he's already in bad financial shape anyway, so just let the bank have it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't blame him for that one. The trial began in Kerrville, Texas on January 6th, 1997, and the masses came to watch. The district attorney decided to concentrate on the death of one of the boys only, Damon. Instead of, they wanted to keep the other boy in limbo just in case she wasn't found guilty or if they didn't get the sentence that they were looking for. So they were like, if we can't get death or a guilty sentence here,
we'll
or a guilty conviction, we'll
one.
try again for the other boy.
Mm-hmm.
Then maybe we'll have luck on that one. So they did separate the 2. Darlie Routier was pleading not guilty to the death of Damon Christian Routier. Now, Chief Prosecutor Greg Davis' opening remarks thundered. In quotes, "The evidence will show you, ladies and gentlemen, that Darlie Routier is a self-centered, materialistic woman cold enough to murder 2 precious children. He vowed to prove how the facts of the case, as found by experts, did not match the mother's explanation of what happened in her home the night of the brutal killings. Defense attorney Mulder, in turn, painted Darlie as a caring mother who, like any other housewife, suffered personal problems and concerns. She was, he said, caught up in a maelstrom of fate. And the state wants you to believe she became a psychotic killer in the blink of an eye, he asked. Well, folks, that's just absurd. Those were the opening statements of the defense and the prosecution. So, and I'm not going to go into a huge detail of the trial itself because a lot of the stuff I've talked about is stuff that was brought up in the trial. A lot of the facts I've given you is stuff that was testified.
Yeah.
So they do hone in on like differences in the wounds between Darlie and the kids, and Darlie's lack of emotion and lack of concern for her kids. Like, she never once asked, because, what was it? I think Damon was the one that was still alive. He was still alive when he went to the ambulance. She never asked if he made it to the hospital alive. She never asked. And investigators talk about how they were able to determine that someone within the house committed the crime rather than an intruder. So they really honed in on that. They did show the jury all the crime scene photos to really hone in on that too. Like, bloody babies. I mean, they were little babies. They also point out the fact that none of Darlie's expensive jewelry was missing, so there's no way it could be like a robbery gone wrong or anything like that. And by the time things were open for the defense to like go about, it just was not looking good. It wasn't looking good for them. So the defense didn't have much to say about Darlie's strange reaction other than saying she was in shock. Like, the reason she reacted that way is because she was in shock. Fine. Whatever. Say what you want to say. The final witness for the defense on January 29th was Darlie herself. And like I said with Karen Reed, it's really bad to go on the stand to defend yourself, because you're going to say something that's going to implicate yourself. And it was a bad decision by Darlie, a really bad decision. It was like the nail in her coffin.
Yeah.
I think she was already going to be found guilty, but I just don't think she made herself look good at all when she went on the stand for herself.
Sure not.
Her defense team tried to talk her out of doing it, but she wouldn't listen.
Right.
They always do. It started off okay, as her attorney guided her through her life story and dedicated motherhood, her domestic problems with Darin, and he had even read, like, excerpts from her diary, like where she wrote the suicide note. They're like, oh, she couldn't have killed her kids, so she was going to kill herself, like, a month before. They were trying to prove that she wasn't a wicked woman due to, like, what she talked about in her diary. And she explained the silly string incident at the gravesite, and the silly string was going to be used as a symbol of the boy's innocence and fun nature. So she also tells the story of the night and says that if her story has changed, it's because she can't remember things clearly, that the shock got in the way of all the facts. Now, when the defense stepped aside, because everything went well when the defense was talking to her, when the prosecution came up, They
ate her alive.
They ate her alive. I mean, they might as well get charged with murder, because they ate her.
When did they ask her?
They just stated that everything she said was a lie. They were, like, screaming at her. Like, I mean, they were
Ruthless.
They were ruthless. They called out the dog and how, like, why is the dog not barking, blah, 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 blah. They called out the blood and how it had been cleaned, and, like, just questioning her, like, why would you clean that? Well, I didn't clean it. Well, you cleaned it. Someone cleaned it.
Yeah.
So don't tell us you didn't do it. But by the time they were done with her, just, like, hounding her about crap, like, I didn't even write it all down. It's just, they were just digging into everything she said. She was sobbing by the time they were done with her.
She probably was regretting.
She was regretting getting up there. She's like, man, this is going great. My lawyer's up there and everything's... Yeah, and then they got up there and it just embarrassed the shit out of her, I'm sure. So what do you think? You think she did it?
100%, yes.
100%. What do you think the jury's going to think?
I think they think she did it.
You think they're going to think she did it? Like, it can't be any other way, right?
I hope not.
So I think the prosecution did a really good job in this case. I really do. I think some jurisdictions could have done like what this Karen Reed thing did and just did things poorly.
Yeah.
Just really poorly.
Especially
because they're
for
in a
2022.
They're
This case was in when?
1996.
Yeah.
and they're in a high scale, like, I feel like back in the 90s, especially in like these really nice neighborhoods, they're not going to think that this
Right.
rich white mom would kill her kids, but they saw the evidence and they said, get to prison. You know what I mean? So I really like that the prosecution didn't let that kind of thing get like cloud their judgment. Like, oh, she couldn't have possibly done this. She throws birthday parties for her kids. She couldn't have done this. But Karen Reed's case, they was literally murdered on this person's front lawn, and we're not even going to go inside the house. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know. It's so weird.
We're not even going to question them, ask for anybody in the house if they saw anything. Why do that?
I know. So I'm really happy with how
this was handled.
I really am happy with how this was handled. And so after hours of deliberation, on February 1st, 1997, the jury did find Darlie Routier guilty of first-degree murder of Damon. So now she was convicted of first-degree murder for Damon. Great. 3 days later, Darlie stood before the judge to receive her sentencing, and they say that she did look very nervous and white-faced. As she was standing there, she did hear the words death. She was sentenced to death. They were shocked, but the judge did sentence her to death. And so, since she was sentenced to death, I think the prosecution decided not to go forward with the other kid. So, she is not like formally charged and convicted for killing the other boy, even though she did.
Right.
They got the sentence they were looking for. You know, there's no point of spending all this money and resources to put her to death twice.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
is she still? When did she get executed?
She hasn't been executed yet. So
people sit on death row forever.
She's sitting on death row forever. So there are some that believe Darlie is innocent. I don't know how you can look at all this and think she's innocent. One of the jurors did come forward and said he was pressured by the group to give a guilty verdict because he's saying he wasn't convinced. Well, then that's your problem. If you let people peer pressure you into giving a verdict that you didn't agree with.
But you obviously weren't sitting in the same courtroom they were.
Yeah. True. You know, you could have hung that jury and you could have let another set of jurors come in and decide. Ooh. So don't sit here and come back and say you were pressured.
Right.
You literally did what someone that does this shouldn't do. So that's on you, man. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. So Darlie has filed like several appeals, but I don't believe any of them have been like successful because she's still on death row. But the latest information I could find was from 2018 where the court ordered a third round of DNA testing. But I never saw anything after that. So if the testing was done, nothing was found. So like I said, she still remains on death row. And when I was looking it up, trying to figure out like when her execution is scheduled for, I'm not sure. I couldn't find that. So I don't know that it's scheduled yet. But my God, she was sentenced in 1997. And it's 2024. She is 3 years shy of spending 30 years in prison on death row. She deserves it, though. You know, that's what I'm saying is sometimes people feel like some people don't like the death penalty because it's the easy way out. You know, like the death penalty nowadays is you don't feel anything. It's not painful.
Right.
You know, and it's the easy way out. But I think we also have to remember that sometimes people sit in prison on death row for 30 years. So they are also getting life in prison. They just have to live every day knowing that they're going to die.
Yeah.
So it probably is a little bit of a hell on earth.
Yeah.
And one thing I would like to add to this is kind of where her family is today. So her husband and her husband, she's innocent. According to him, she's innocent. They stayed married up until 2011. I guess they eventually did file for divorce. And he stated that the decision was mutual and very difficult, and that he believes that she was innocent. I mean, I don't know. I guess they finally decided to get divorced because they knew that she was never going to get out. And, yeah. And the youngest son, Drake, which is now an adult, he still visits her in jail. And he believes that she's innocent. I did see where he was diagnosed with acute lymphocytic leukemia. So I don't know when that was, if he's even still alive. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's sad.
But yeah. He thinks that she is innocent. I wonder if he ever feels like survivor guilt.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. I just can't imagine getting to a point where I butcher my children. I feel like if I ever killed someone, the guilt would be so hard on me that I wouldn't even try to get away with it. I'd be like, send me to prison.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, this one, she's a monster.
That she is.
Yeah. So that's all I have on Darlie Routier.
Well, I had not heard about that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. And yeah, she's from Texas, but this is one I had on my list. I don't remember if someone
Told you about it.
told me about it. Sometimes I'll see them on TikTok and I'll be like, oh, that story is interesting, and I'll write it down. So I don't remember where this one came from.
Yeah.
So if you suggested Darlie Routier to me, let me know, because I totally forgot. I wrote it down on my list. I have a whole list. When you guys send suggestions, they come on my list. And I don't remember who told me about this one. But yeah, I think that's it. So
Thank you for joining us.
yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.